What is the relationship between religion and culture?
Culture is the distinct way a civilization expresses itself. And at the heart of every civilization is religion. It is the way a civilization deals with the larger questions of life and its mysteries. Apart from whatever else religion may be, I think it is also a culture making machine. And through it, it percolates into every aspect of life. Liberal society, as is evident from its name and referential self-definition, will always remain in opposition to some values. But that fundamental conflict is not really with religion. It is a conflict with culture, all culture, because culture creates specificity, builds traditions, defies reason, and challenges external authority. All cultures assert themselves the same way. They do not claim to be logical, scientific, or even efficient. It's a way of belonging somewhere. The goal of liberal society, on the other hand, is a rational, cosmopolitan egalitarianism, which, as is obvious, will sooner or later find itself in conflict with culture. Unfortunately, this cannot be resolved with reason, because reason is itself a point in question. In the cultural space, tradition prevails, not reason as the basis for action. The view of religion, however, as being nothing other than superstition and irrationality, is somewhat narrow and uninformed, because every religious tradition is also a treasure of the deepest and most beautiful forms of human expression. The best examples of human creation in literature, philosophy, painting, sculpture, architecture, music, dance, and all the forms assumed by culture are born of and constitute religion. Some of these forms and symbols, refined and polished over thousands of years, are highly sophisticated and powerful ideas that can help us connect with and inhabit a universe that is larger, fuller, and richer, yet one we can belong to and not feel lost in. The cross as a symbol of resurrection and redemption, of love and forgiveness, the chanting of Om in different traditions, echoing the cosmic sound, the awakening to reality and truth and the universal possibility of Buddhahood, the very conception and depiction of the dance of Shiva, the stark and stunning mathematical abstractions and complex symmetries pointing to an eternal order in Islam, the power of non-doing, and even the simple minimal representation of yin and yang in Tao, the conscious break from logic and the simplicity and quietude of Zen, and so many breathtaking ideas are a distillation of life that make the ineffable tangible enough for us to touch and feel, understand and grasp its essence. Their impact across large parts of the world over such long spans of time makes them undoubtedly among the most significant achievements of human thought and existence. Many opponents of religion respond to and love the culture that is born of religion. They like being on that train, but they want to do away with the engine. You cannot choose between culture and reason, says Ellen Bloom. They both are the cornerstones of the dignity of man. The conflict is within us, he says, because instead of reconciling the two, we force an unnecessary choice upon ourselves, which can only impoverish us. Moreover, we have made God into an unutterable word. Using it, particularly among the intellectual elite, embarrasses us. It is treated like an ancient or medieval idea. No place has been created for God in modernity, to which we are naturally attracted because of its progressive stance and confident rejection of the old. In any case, many religions too have nothing or very little to do with God. A major one like Buddhism is simply not interested in God. There's no place for him in their discourse or their practice. Religion actually is nothing other than a community of people with the same view of or belief in spirituality, or say, a set of foundational guiding principles central to their lives and who share a certain way of expressing them. But even within that community, it is up to each individual based on his or her level of understanding as to how he or she uses this resource. It can be used to separate and confront, or it can be used to love and embrace. It can become a tool to search deeper, or it can become a destination where one has found certainty and decides to explore no further. The physicist Heinz Pagels tells us that the characteristic of all fundamentalism, whether intellectual, political, scientific, or religious, is that it has found absolute certainty. The nature of fundamentalism is that it projects the internal convictions of the individual into the objective external world as a form of certainty about the world. The certainty, thus, for such individuals becomes a property of the world and not just an aspect of themselves, he says. The devoutly religious person constructs the thought not as, I believe this to be the truth, but as, this is the truth, even when there is no empirical proof. Of course, one's belief can also be seen purely as an internal matter only, a part of one's subjectivity as a creative individual being. And this can sometimes lead one to the idea of an abstract and personal God. But howsoever attractive and valid the idea may be, it also requires an inventive way of addressing it. So if one wants to separate spirituality from religion, one has to remove oneself from community and create one's own ways and means of expressing that spirituality differently from the customs of the community. True, all rituals, including those created by religious traditions, can over time lose their meaning and power just as the best of proverbs do because of overuse. They become cliches. But is it not obvious that only good proverbs can become overused and become cliches? So the idea should not be to throw the baby with the bathwater, but to reinvest these rituals, these forms of expression with freshness and meaning. One must remember that religions are like living organisms that constantly evolve and adapt to a continuously changing environment. If one looks at their histories, this is even true of religions that appear rigid, hardline, or fundamentalist. They have changed, been challenged, or broken from within into sects that have divergent beliefs. From the early sacrificial rites and rituals of the hunter's life, to those of agriculture, and from nature religions to sociological ones, they have evolved, adapted, and come such a long way. Nevertheless, religions are never perfect and are always in need of reform, and are in fact being reinterpreted and reformed for better or for worse all the time. Unfortunately, collective change and evolution are a slow and sometimes unpredictable process. Now, to converse with an abstract God by abstract means may be possible for some very evolved individuals. I don't think it is as easy for many of us as we may imagine. And even the rituals we are capable of creating may not necessarily be as original as we may like to believe. To bow your head, to fold your hands, to kneel or prostrate yourself, to close your eyes or to look up at the sky, to light a candle or lamp, or even talking to God or to the universe. It's all been done before. You may create your own private prayer, but to invent the idea of prayer, that capacity for reverence, where our deepest longing travels beyond all boundaries, that has already been done for us. We are the inheritors of great learning, great traditions, of the accumulated experience of human existence in this universe. We have to add to this corpus the little understanding that our time on earth brings, and let that whole mass, that totality, evolve and be transformed slowly. To just toss it all away seems unwise to me. James Joyce uses an interesting term, amateur atheist. By discarding history, tradition, or any such background, that is what one would be. Even so, spirituality without religion may all be very well, except that living alone in that halfway house on the edge of the village in which everyone else believes in a common practice or God, and I stand aside refusing to belong with them, it doesn't quite solve the real problem. In fact, it aggravates it. It becomes about me and my God. And since it is so personal, my personal God, there's no one I can share it with or talk to about. So I end up isolating myself and making myself even more lonely and special. Too precious, actually. If there were a community, there might be a truer perspective of me in relation to the world as a minuscule part of it. There could be actual support and belonging even in this huge world. But spirituality without religion doesn't have space for that. And the moment you create a community of the spiritual without being religious, or even of agnostics or atheists opposed to religion or to God, you actually become like a cult or just another religion. When we substituted the word nature for God, we really didn't do anything, says the writer Isaac Bashevis Singer. Because what in fact is nature? How does it work? What are its laws? Are its forces seen? What keeps it going? The difference between us and religious people, he says, is that we call the unknown nature and they call it God. I love this idea among the Jews, or Jewish people if you will, that a Jew can be against God, but never without God. If my basic premise is the idea of living in, or rather being part of a connected universe as a whole, how can I even think of this stupendous marvel, this universe, without wondering who or what force created it all, how it came into existence and why? But if, in search of spirituality, we strip the very idea of history, culture, community, and even God, I wonder what's left in it.